ورحمة الله. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. My dear brothers and sisters, we continue with Nida'atul Iman, the verses that started with Ya ayyuhal ladhina amanu. And one of those, verse 254 from Surah Al-Baqarah, Allah the Almighty said, Ya ayyuhal ladhina amanu anfiqu أنفقوا مما رزقناكم من قبل أن يأتي يوم لا بيع فيه ولا خلة ولا شفاعة والكافرون هم الظالمون. This verse 254, and a simple meaning for this: O you who believe, spend from which we have provided for you before there comes a day in which there is no ransom and no friendship and no intercession. And the disbelievers, they are the wrongdoers. It's very important to understand that Iman and Infaq are connected in many verses in the Quran. آمنوا بالله ورسوله وأنفقوا. So that connection, it's very obvious. And why is that? Because this is one of the tests of the Iman. When you have a strong Iman, it will be easier for you to spend in the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Otherwise, you'll think a lot and you'll be greedy. So they said, اختبروهم بالمفروش والمنقوش. If you want to test the real material of the person, you test him with the money, the way of dealing. It's not just, because of the salah, They said to Sayyidina Ali, I know this person and he's a good one. He said, oh, maybe you saw him in the masjid. You saw him praying. Have you dealt with him to know exactly he's a really good person or not? So it's a real test, one of the real tests, like you want to deal with money. And when you give in the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and aiming to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and no for nothing for this dunya, not for any worldly gain, just for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's one of the highest level of Iman. Ya ladhina amanu anfiqu mimma razaqnakum. And this is a reminder that whatever you spend, that Allah spent on you, that's actually Al-malu malullah. This is the money that's from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you give it back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the sake of Allah. And Allah will reward you. That's His money, but still He will reward you for spending that one. Ya ibn Adam, anfiq yunfaq alayk. Wa anfiqu mimma ja'alakum mustakhlafina fih. They told a man, is that your camel? They pointed him to a camel. Is that yours? No. هي لله عندي. هي لله عندي. That's belong to Allah, but just temporary in my hand. At this time it's in my hand, but that's belong to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In fact, inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. All of us, we didn't own anything. We didn't even own our body. We didn't own anything. That all for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We're only temporarily utilizing that in a way to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or we have the choice to do the wrong way. Ya ladhina amanu anfiqu mimma razaqnakum. And keep in mind that day. من قبل أن يأتي يوم لا بيع فيه ولا خلة ولا شفاعة. And somebody will say, no, you know what? No, that day there is kind of a ransom, there is kind of a friendship that will be helpful, there is intercession. So does that mean that there is contradiction here? No, there's no contradiction. Sometimes in the ayat, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will mention it with no exception. Just the general rule with no exception. And sometimes will make the exception. That's why do not make any judgment from one single verse where other similar verses is that you have not bring it all together. So when you want to take a judgment from Quran, do not even take one verse. No, you have to make it all together. I'll give you an example. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for example, in of the ayat of making compensation, He said, free a neck. You set somebody free. There's a slave that, you pay for that slave to be a free. He didn't say any slave. He didn't say a believer or not believer, general one. However, another verse, he said, تَحْرِيرُ رَقَبَةٍ مُؤْمِنَةٍ. That slave, as a condition, has to be a believing person. Okay? Has to be a believer. So that ayah, they call it مطلقة تقيدها الآية الأخرى. So the other verse will make the restriction for the ayah that was mentioned with no restriction. So the ayat here, they said, at that day, nothing will benefit you except by the will of Allah. And read the next ayah. Next ayah. Which, you know what's next ayah after this? Ayat al-Kursi. Allah said, مَنْ ذَا الَّذِي يَشْفَعُ عِنْدَهُ إِلَّا بِإِذْنِهِ. So there is intercession, but all of that by the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that permission will be given to those they deserve it. And those they spend themselves of Allah among those they deserve that one. And we have to invest in our time before it's too late. يا أيها الذين آمنوا أنفقوا مما رزقناكم من قبل يأتي يوم لا بيع فيه ولا خلة ولا شفاعة والكافرون هم الظالمون. In other words, do not rely on the things that's not in your hand. Because the khulla and shafa'a and many other things not in your hand. That's up to the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But you have to make your choices today on the things that are in your control. So as long as you have the control for yours and your properties, then you should make the right choices. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant the best for all of us. Ameen. Subhanakallahumma bihamdik. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.